Hey there. Welcome back to my channel, Book Demystified. You know what? I'm genuinely excited to talk to you today because we're diving into something that literally changed my perspective on money forever. We're talking about The Barefoot Investor by Scott Pape, and specifically those simple steps to financial freedom that everyone keeps talking about, but nobody seems to actually explain in a way that makes sense for regular people like us. Picture this. You're sitting at your kitchen table on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, looking at your bank account on your phone, and you're thinking, where the heck did all my money go? Sound familiar? Maybe you're scrolling through Instagram, seeing everyone else seemingly living their best life, while you're over here wondering how you're going to make it to the next paycheck. Trust me, I've been there, and so have millions of Americans. Scott Pape gets it. This guy isn't some Wall Street executive in a fancy suit telling you to invest in complex derivatives. He's literally called the Barefoot Investor because he believes in keeping things so simple that you could manage your money while walking around barefoot. And you know what? That's exactly what we need in a world where financial advice seems designed to confuse us rather than help us. Here's the thing that blew my mind about this book. Pape breaks down financial freedom into steps so simple that a teenager could follow them. But here's the kicker. These aren't just theoretical concepts. These are practical, actionable steps that work in the real world, whether you're making $30,000 a year or $300,000 a year. Let me paint a picture of what financial freedom actually looks like in everyday American life. It's not about having a yacht or a mansion in the Hamptons. It's about being able to sleep at night without worrying about money. It's about not having a panic attack when your car breaks down. It's about being able to take your family on vacation without putting it on a credit card and stressing about it for months afterward. It's about having choices, real choices, about how you want to spend your time and who you want to spend it with. Pape starts with a fundamental truth that most financial advisors won't tell you. You don't need to be a math genius to build wealth. You don't need to understand complex investment strategies. You don't need to spend hours every day managing your portfolio. What you need is a system that works automatically, even when you're not thinking about it. The beauty of the Barefoot Investor approach is that it's designed for people who have better things to do than obsess over their money. You know, people who have jobs, families, hobbies, and lives to live. People who want their money to work for them, not the other way around. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, debt. If you're like most Americans, you're carrying some form of debt. Maybe it's student loans from college, credit card debt from that period when you were figuring out your life, or a car loan that seemed like a good idea at the time. Pape doesn't judge you for having debt. Instead, he shows you exactly how to eliminate it systematically and permanently. Here's where it gets interesting. Pape introduces what he calls the Barefoot Buckets system. Think of these as different accounts that serve specific purposes in your financial life. It's like having designated parking spots for your money. Everything has its place, and you always know where to find what you need. The first bucket is what he calls the daily expenses bucket. This is where your daily spending money lives. Think about it like this. If you were going to the grocery store, paying for gas, grabbing coffee with friends, or buying that streaming service subscription, this money comes from your daily expenses bucket. The genius of this system is that once you set it up, you never have to think about budgeting again. The money is already allocated, and you can spend it guilt-free. But here's where most people mess up, and Pape addresses this head-on. We tend to think of budgeting as this restrictive, punishing process where we have to deny ourselves everything we enjoy. That's not what this is about at all. This is about giving yourself permission to spend money on things you value while automatically building wealth in the background. Now, here's something that really resonated with me about Pape's approach. He understands that Americans live in a consumer culture. We're bombarded with advertisements, social media posts, and peer pressure to spend money on things we don't really need.
Instead of telling you to become a monk and never spend money on anything fun, he builds splurge spending right into the system. It's like having a release valve that prevents you from exploding and going on a spending spree that destroys your financial progress. The third bucket is the smile bucket, and this is your emergency fund. Pape calls it the smile bucket because having emergency money makes you smile. And boy, does it ever. You know that feeling when something unexpected happens, your car needs new tires, your dog needs to go to the vet, or your laptop decides to die right when you need it most, and instead of panicking, you just handle it. That's what the smile bucket gives you.
Most financial experts tell you to save 3 to 6 months of expenses for emergencies. That's great advice, but it can feel overwhelming when you're just starting out. Pape breaks it down into achievable chunks. Start with $1,000, just $1,000. That's enough to handle most small emergencies without going into debt. Once you have that, work your way up to $2,000, then $3,000, and so on. Here's the beautiful thing about the smile bucket. It's not just about the money. It's about the psychological transformation that happens when you know you can handle whatever life throws at you. Suddenly, you're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. You're not constantly stressed about money. You have options, and options equal freedom. But wait, there's more. The fourth bucket is where the real wealth building happens, the grow bucket. This is your long-term investment money. Now, before you start thinking about complicated stock picks and cryptocurrency schemes, let me tell you what Pape actually recommends. He keeps it simple: low-cost index funds. Hey, if you're enjoying our free book summaries and want to support what we do, there are a few easy ways to help. You can subscribe to the channel, become a member, or grab the book using our affiliate link in the description. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can also leave a tip via PayPal. The link's below. Every bit of support helps us keep creating valuable content for you. Now, back to building wealth. Index funds are like buying a tiny piece of the entire stock market. Instead of trying to pick individual winners and losers, you're betting on the overall growth of the American economy. And historically, that's been a pretty good bet. The S&P 500, which represents the 500 largest companies in America, has averaged about 10% annual returns over the long term. But here's what I love about Pape's approach to investing. He doesn't try to time the market or chase hot stocks. He advocates for dollar-cost averaging, which means investing the same amount every month regardless of whether the market is up or down. When the market is down, you buy more shares for the same money. When it's up, you buy fewer shares. Over time, this smooths out the volatility and helps you build wealth consistently. Let me give you a real-world example that'll blow your mind. Let's say you're 25 years old and you start investing $200 a month in an index fund. If you never increase that amount and you earn the historical average of 10% annually, by the time you're 65, you'll have over $1.1 million. That's right, less than $7 a day turns into more than $1 million over 40 years. That's the power of compound interest, and it's available to anyone who starts early and stays consistent. But what if you're not 25? What if you're 35, or 45, or even 55? Pape addresses this too. The key is to start where you are with what you have. If you can only invest $50 a month, start with $50. If you can do 100, start with 100. The important thing is to start. Now let's talk about something that trips up a lot of people: automatic investing. Pape is a huge advocate for automating your entire financial system. Here's why this is so powerful. It removes emotion and decision-making from the equation. Every month, money automatically flows into your buckets before you even see it. You can't spend money you don't have access to, and you can't make emotional decisions about money that's already been allocated. Think about it like this. When you get your paycheck, the first thing that happens is taxes come out. You don't see that money, so you don't miss it. The same principle applies to your savings and investments. Set up automatic transfers so that money goes to your buckets before you have a chance to spend it on something else. Here's a hook that'll keep you listening. Pape shares a story about a woman who was drowning in debt and living paycheck to paycheck. She was a single mom working 2 jobs, and she felt like she'd never get ahead. But she implemented the Barefoot Investor system exactly as written. 5 years later, she was debt-free, had a 6-month emergency fund, and was on track to retire comfortably. The key wasn't that she made more money, it was that she made her money work more efficiently. This brings up an important point about the psychology of money. Most of us have been conditioned to think that building wealth requires sacrifice and deprivation. We think we have to choose between enjoying life today and securing our future. Pape shows us that this is a false choice. You can do both, but you need a system that makes it automatic. Let's dive deeper into debt elimination, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. The average American household carries about $6,000 in credit card debt. That might not sound like a lot, but when you're paying 18% interest, it becomes a massive anchor that prevents you from building wealth.
Pape introduces what he calls the debt domino strategy. Here's how it works. You list all your debts from smallest to largest balance. You pay the minimum on all of them, but you put every extra dollar toward the smallest debt. Once that's paid off, you take that payment and add it to the payment on the next smallest debt. This creates a snowball effect where your debt payments get bigger and bigger as you eliminate each debt. Now, some financial experts argue that you should pay off high-interest debt first, regardless of balance. That makes mathematical sense, but Pape understands something those experts miss. Personal finance is more personal than it is finance. The psychological boost you get from completely eliminating a debt is often more valuable than the small amount of interest you might save by focusing on mathematical optimization. Here's a real-world example. Let's say you have 3 credit cards. Card A has a $500 balance at 15% interest. Card B has a $2,000 balance at 18% interest. And Card C has a $5,000 balance at 20% interest. The mathematical approach would be to focus on Card C first because it has the highest interest rate. But the Barefoot approach is to focus on Card A first because you can pay it off quickly and get that psychological win that motivates you to keep going. The beauty of this system is that it works with human psychology instead of against it. Every time you pay off a debt, you get a rush of accomplishment that motivates you to tackle the next one. Before you know it, you're debt-free and wondering why you didn't start sooner. But here's something most people don't think about. What happens after you pay off your debt? This is where a lot of people make a crucial mistake. They get so used to making debt payments that when the debt is gone, they just start spending that money on other things. Pape calls this lifestyle inflation, and it's the enemy of wealth building. Instead, when you pay off a debt, you redirect that payment into your grow bucket. So if you were paying $300 a month on a car loan, once the car is paid off, that $300 automatically goes into your investment account. This is how you accelerate your wealth building without feeling like you're making additional sacrifices. Now let's talk about something that's particularly relevant for Americans: retirement planning. The reality is that Social Security alone won't provide enough income for most people to maintain their current lifestyle in retirement. The average Social Security payment is about $1,500 per month. Can you live on $1,500 a month? Maybe, but it wouldn't be comfortable. This is where the grow bucket becomes your retirement lifeline. Pape advocates for what he calls the set and forget approach to retirement investing. You set up automatic contributions to low-cost index funds, and then you forget about them. You don't check them every day. You don't panic when the market goes down. You just let compound interest do its magic over time. Here's a mind-blowing statistic. If you start investing $500 a month at age 25 and earn an average of 10% annually, you'll have over $2.8 million by age 65. But if you wait until age 35 to start, you'll only have about $1.1 million. That 10-year delay cost you $1.7 million. That's the power of starting early, and it's why Pape emphasizes the importance of beginning your investment journey as soon as possible. But what if you're already behind? What if you're 40 or 50 and you haven't started investing yet? The answer is simple: start now. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Even if you can only invest for 15 or 20 years before retirement, you can still build a substantial nest egg if you're consistent and disciplined. Here's another hook for you. Pape tells the story of a man who started investing at age 45 with nothing saved for retirement. He was panicking because he felt like it was too late, but he started investing $800 a month in index funds. By age 65, he had accumulated over $400,000. Combined with Social Security, he was able to retire comfortably. The key was that he didn't let perfectionism prevent him from starting. This brings up an important point about perfectionism and money. A lot of people never start investing because they feel like they don't know enough or they're waiting for the perfect time. Pape argues that the perfect time doesn't exist. There will always be economic uncertainty, market volatility, and reasons to wait. The key is to start with what you have and learn as you go. One thing that really sets Pape apart from other financial advisors is his focus on simplicity. He doesn't try to impress you with complex strategies or fancy financial products. He gives you a system that works and tells you to stick with it. This is refreshing in a world where financial advice often seems designed to confuse rather than clarify. Let's talk about insurance, because this is another area where Pape's practical approach shines. He doesn't advocate for expensive whole life insurance policies that combine insurance with investing. Instead, he recommends term life insurance, which is pure insurance without the investment component. It's cheaper, simpler, and more effective for most people.
Here's why this matters. If you're young and healthy, you can get a substantial term life insurance policy for relatively little money. For example, a healthy 30-year-old might pay $300 a year for $500,000 of coverage. That's less than $1 a day to protect your family's financial future. Then, instead of buying expensive whole life insurance, you invest the difference in your grow bucket, where it can actually grow. The same principle applies to other types of insurance. Pape advocates for higher deductibles on your car and home insurance in exchange for lower premiums. The money you save on premiums goes into your smile bucket, which can cover the higher deductibles if you need them. Over time, you'll likely save money because you're not paying for insurance to cover small claims that you could handle yourself. Now, let's address something that's uniquely American: healthcare costs. This is something that can completely derail your financial plan if you're not prepared. Pape emphasizes the importance of having adequate health insurance and building your emergency fund specifically with healthcare costs in mind. Here's a sobering statistic. Medical bills are the leading cause of bankruptcy in America, and most of those people actually had health insurance. The problem is that even with insurance, you can face substantial out-of-pocket costs for deductibles, co-pays, and services that aren't covered. This is where the smile bucket becomes even more important. Pape suggests that if you have a high-deductible health plan, you should have at least enough in your emergency fund to cover your maximum out-of-pocket expenses. This way, if you face a medical emergency, you can focus on getting better instead of worrying about how you're going to pay for it. Here's another game-changing concept from the book: the idea of buying back your time. As you build wealth, you reach a point where you can start making choices based on what you want to do rather than what you have to do. Maybe that means working fewer hours, taking a lower-paying job that you enjoy more, or starting your own business. Pape shares stories of people who use the Barefoot Investor system to gain this kind of freedom. There's the teacher who was able to reduce her hours and spend more time with her kids. There's the construction worker who saved enough to start his own contracting business. There's the office manager who built enough wealth to take a year off and travel the world. The key insight here is that financial freedom isn't just about having money, it's about becoming free. Now, let's talk about something that's particularly relevant in today's economy: inflation. The cost of everything seems to be going up: gas, groceries, housing, you name it. This can make it feel like you're fighting a losing battle when it comes to building wealth. But Pape's system is designed to handle inflation automatically. Here's why. When you invest in index funds, you're buying pieces of companies that can raise their prices along with inflation. Over time, stock prices tend to keep pace with or exceed inflation. So while your dollars might be worth less in terms of purchasing power, your investments are growing to compensate.
This is why keeping all your money in savings accounts is actually a losing strategy in the long run. Even high-yield savings accounts typically don't keep pace with inflation over time. You need some of your money invested in assets that can grow if you want to maintain and build your purchasing power. But here's the thing about inflation that most people don't realize. It's actually helpful for people who have debt. If you have a fixed-rate mortgage or car loan, inflation makes it easier to pay off because you're paying back the loan with dollars that are worth less than when you borrowed them. This is another reason why Pape doesn't advocate for paying off low-interest debt like mortgages early. That money is often better invested where it can grow faster than the interest rate you're paying.
Let's dive into something that trips up a lot of people: investment fees. This might seem like a boring topic, but it's actually one of the most important aspects of building wealth. Small differences in fees can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. Here's an example that'll shock you. Let's say you invest $500 a month for 30 years and earn 10% annually. If you pay 1% in fees, you'll end up with about $849,000. If you pay 2% in fees, you'll end up with about $679,000. That 1% difference in fees cost you $170,000 over 30 years. That's why Pape is so focused on low-cost index funds. They typically charge 0.1% or less in fees. The investment industry doesn't want you to know this, but most actively managed funds don't beat the market over the long term. And when you factor in their higher fees, they're even worse. That's why Pape advocates for simple, low-cost index funds that track the entire market rather than trying to beat it. Here's another hook that'll keep you engaged. Pape shares research showing that the average investor earns significantly less than the market average. Why? Because they buy high and sell low. They get excited and buy when the market is going up, then panic and sell when it's going down. This is the opposite of what you should do, but it's exactly what most people do. The Barefoot Investor system protects you from this by automating your investments. You invest the same amount every month regardless of what the market is doing. This removes emotion from the equation and helps you buy more shares when prices are low and fewer shares when prices are high. Over time, this dollar-cost averaging approach leads to better returns than trying to time the market. Now let's talk about something that's uniquely challenging for Americans: the complexity of our tax system. The good news is that Pape's approach to investing is very tax efficient. Index funds don't trade as frequently as actively managed funds, so they generate fewer taxable events. Plus, if you hold your investments for more than a year, you qualify for long-term capital gains rates, which are lower than ordinary income tax rates. But here's where it gets really interesting. Pape also talks about tax-advantaged accounts, like 401ks and IRAs. These accounts allow you to invest money before paying taxes on it, which can significantly boost your wealth building. For example, if you're in the 22% tax bracket and you contribute $5,000 to a 401k, you save $1,100 in taxes. That's like getting a 22% immediate return on your investment. The key is to take advantage of any employer matching in your 401k first. This is literally free money. If your employer matches 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary, you should contribute at least 6% to get the full match. That's an immediate 50% return on your investment, which is better than any other investment you'll ever find. Here's something that really resonated with me about Pape's approach. He doesn't just focus on the numbers. He understands that money affects every aspect of your life: your relationships, your health, your career choices, your family planning. Financial stress can destroy marriages, affect your performance at work, and even impact your physical health. When you implement the Barefoot Investor system, you're not just building wealth. You're reducing stress, improving your relationships, and creating more opportunities for yourself and your family. You're buying peace of mind, and that's priceless. Let me share another story that illustrates this point. A couple I know was constantly fighting about money. They had different spending habits, different financial goals, and different ideas about how to manage their money. It was putting a strain on their marriage. Then they read the Barefoot Investor and implemented the bucket system together. Suddenly, they had a framework for managing their money that worked for both of them. They stopped fighting about money and started working together toward their financial goals. Their marriage improved, and they're now well on their way to financial independence.
That's the power of having a system that works. It removes the guesswork and the emotion from financial decisions. You don't have to argue about whether you can afford something, you just check the appropriate bucket. If the money's there, you can spend it guilt-free. If it's not, you wait until it is. Now let's talk about something that's particularly relevant in today's gig economy. More and more Americans are working as freelancers, contractors, or in jobs where their income varies from month to month. This can make it challenging to implement a system like the Barefoot Investor buckets, which seem designed for people with steady paychecks. But Pape addresses this too. The key is to base your budget on your lowest expected monthly income, not your highest. So if you're a freelancer and some months you make $3,000 and other months you make $6,000, you should budget based on $3,000. The extra money in good months goes into your smile bucket to smooth out the lean months. This approach requires discipline, but it's incredibly powerful and allows you to live consistently regardless of income fluctuations, and it builds up a substantial emergency fund that can power you through slow periods. Here's another concept that's crucial for Americans: the importance of financial education. Our education system does a terrible job of teaching people about money. Most people graduate from high school and college without understanding basic concepts like compound interest, investing, or even how to balance a checkbook. Pape argues that financial education is one of the most important investments you can make. But he's not talking about getting an MBA in finance. He's talking about understanding the basic principles that will allow you to build wealth over time. The beautiful thing about the Barefoot Investor system is that it teaches you these principles through practical application.
As you implement this system, you'll naturally learn about budgeting, saving, investing, and wealth building. You don't need to read dozens of books or take expensive courses. You just need to start with the basics and build from there. Let me give you another hook that'll keep you listening. Pape talks about the concept of enough. In our consumer culture, we're constantly told that we need more stuff, more money, more experiences. But Pape argues that the key to financial happiness is figuring out what enough means for you. This doesn't mean living like a monk or depriving yourself of everything you enjoy. It means being intentional about your spending and making sure that your money is going toward things that actually make you happy. It means distinguishing between wants and needs and making conscious choices about how to allocate your resources. Here's a powerful exercise from the book. Write down your financial goals and then ask yourself why each goal is important to you. Keep asking why until you get to the root of what you're really after. You might discover that what you really want isn't a bigger house or a fancier car. It's security, freedom, or the ability to provide for your family. Once you understand what you're really after, you can make better decisions about how to allocate your money. You might realize that you don't need to spend as much as you thought to achieve your real goals. Or you might discover that you're spending money on things that don't actually contribute to your happiness. Now let's talk about something that's particularly important for young Americans: the power of starting early. If you're in your 20s or 30s, you have a massive advantage when it comes to building wealth: time. Even small amounts invested regularly can grow into substantial sums over time. Here's an example that'll blow your mind. If you start investing $200 a month at age 25 and earn 10% annually, you'll have over $1.1 million by age 65. But if you wait until age 35 to start, you'll have only about $452,000. That 10-year delay cost you over $600,000. That's the power of compound interest in time. But here's the thing about young people and money. They often feel like they can't afford to invest because they're not making much money. Pape addresses this directly. He argues that you can't afford not to invest, even if you're making minimum wage. Even $25 a month invested consistently can grow into a substantial amount over time. The key is to start with what you can afford and increase your contributions as your income grows. Don't wait until you're making more money to start investing. Start now with whatever you can afford and let time work in your favor. Here's another story that illustrates this point. Pape tells about a young woman who started investing $50 a month when she was 22 years old. She was working in retail and barely making ends meet, but she automated that $50 so she never saw it.
Every year, she increased her contribution by $10. By the time she was 35, she was contributing $180 a month. By age 45, she had over $200,000 invested. She's now on track to retire as a millionaire, all because she started early with a small amount. That's the power of the Barefoot Investor system. It works for people at any income level, as long as they're consistent and disciplined. Now, let's talk about something that's particularly relevant in today's digital age: the psychological impact of constant financial information. We're bombarded with news about the stock market, economic indicators, and financial advice from every direction. This can lead to information overload and analysis paralysis. Pape advocates for what he calls financial media fasting. Once you've set up your automated system, you don't need to check your investments every day. You don't need to read every article about the stock market. You don't need to panic when the market goes down or get overly excited when the market goes up. This is counterintuitive in our information-obsessed culture, but it's actually one of the most powerful aspects of the Barefoot Investor system. By automating your investments and then ignoring the day-to-day noise, you're much more likely to stick with your plan and achieve your long-term goals. Here's a final hook before we wrap up. Pape shares research showing that people who check their investments less frequently actually earn higher returns than those who check them constantly. Why? Because they're less likely to make emotional decisions based on short-term market movements. The investors who check their accounts every day are more likely to panic during market downturns and sell at the worst possible time. They're also more likely to get overconfident during market upswings and make risky decisions. The investors who check their accounts quarterly or annually are more likely to stick with their long-term strategy and ride out the inevitable ups and downs. This is why Pape's set and forget approach is so powerful. You set up your system, automate your investments, and then live your life. You don't need to become a financial expert or spend hours managing your money. You just need to be consistent and patient. As we wrap up this deep dive into the Barefoot Investor, I want to leave you with the most important takeaway. Financial freedom isn't about having millions of dollars or living like a millionaire. It's about having enough money to make choices based on what you want to do rather than what you have to do. The Barefoot Investor system gives you a simple, proven path to achieve this kind of freedom. It's not about getting rich quick or finding the next hot investment. It's about building wealth slowly and steadily over time through consistent, disciplined actions. The beautiful thing about this system is that it works whether you're making $30,000 a year or $300,000 a year. It works whether you're 22 or 52. It works whether you're starting with nothing or you already have some money saved. The key is to start where you are with what you have and be consistent. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. You don't need to implement everything at once. Start with one bucket, then add another, then another. Build the system gradually and let it grow with you over time. The most important step is the first step. Stop waiting for the perfect time or the perfect amount of money. Start today with whatever you can afford. Set up those automatic transfers, open that investment account, and begin your journey toward financial freedom. Your future self will thank you for taking action today. And who knows, maybe in a few years, you'll be the one sharing your success story with others who are just starting their own journey to financial freedom. That's the power of simple steps. They lead to extraordinary results when you take them consistently over time. The Barefoot Investor shows you exactly what those steps are. Now, it's up to you to take them. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to start. And the best time to start is right now.